We're going to make Alton Brown's recipe for overnight cinnamon rolls. And the beauty of this recipe is you get the dough and all of that ready the night before, put it in your refrigerator overnight. The next morning you proof it and then bake them. So you can have nice fresh caramel rolls or cinnamon rolls in the morning. One thing about this loaf, lean loaves of bread have the 4 of breaddom, water, flour, yeast, and salt. This is more of a rich bread in which there is a lot of enrichment, and the sugar is... You can do any bread recipe you want and increase it or decrease it and keep the proportions the same if you use baker's percentages, in which the flour is considered 100%, and every other ingredient, it's a percentage by weight of the total flour weight. So in this recipe, we're using 20 ounces of flour and 2 ounces of sugar. And in a 10% sugar ratio, the yeast have a harder time raising the loaf than, you know, a lower percentage. So it is a rich bread. This recipe, you know, the typical 4 of breaddom is water, flour, yeast, and salt, but we are using buttermilk at room temperature, and flour, instant yeast this time instead of all-purpose flour, kosher salt, and the additives we're going to add in there are eggs, sugar, and unsalted butter. So from the recipe, we have 4 large egg yolks plus 1 large egg. We have 2 ounces of sugar, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which we are going to melt. Over here, we have 3/4 cup of buttermilk, 20 ounces by weight of all-purpose flour, and 1 envelope of instant yeast, which is 2 1/4 teaspoons. And then we have 1 1/4 teaspoons of kosher salt. Okay, our butter is melted. So we'll mix the butter, the egg yolks, and the egg. All the sugar and the buttermilk. Put that into your friendly stand mixer, and we will whisk that. On medium speed, just to bring it together. Okay, we beat that on medium speed for a minute or so. Now we're going to add roughly half of the flour into here. Now you see why paper plates work easier than a hard bowl. I'm just going to mix that together. Come out of there. I made a mess here. Now what we're going to do, put the rest of the flour in. Oops, I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to put most of the flour in. I didn't read the recipe too close. Now we're going to switch over to the dough hook and slowly bring this bread together. on low speed. We're going to let this knead for 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes of TV time has gone by. I'm just kneading this by hand a few times on the countertop. Just to make sure it's good kneaded. And then kind of make like you're, flip it over, make like you're making a jellyfish. Just kind of twist it down and push the center, the middle up. Kind of forming a little ball there. And this will tighten up the skin on it. As we did in our other bread recipe, again, how do we know that this is doubled in volume? Once we put the dough in here and grease this with no stick spray, and we'll mark it with the rubber band so we will know when it is doubled in volume. Now what I like to do is crank my oven on 350 for 1 minute and then shut it off, and then put this in there in a semi-warm oven so that it rises. What we have here is 8 ounces by weight of light brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, and a pinch of kosher salt. What salt does is actually enhances the sense of sweetness. You know, at the taste bud level, it makes sweet things sweeter. Now this here, available from my friend and neighbor, Mr. Dave Forthen, at Minot Restaurant Supply. We have a dash, a smidgen, and a pinch. So these are available at Minot Restaurant Supply. And this we will mix up. This will be our filling. And in case I didn't mention it, before we put the bread in to rise, that needs to rise for 2 to 2.5 hours. So it's a long, slow rise. The next thing we're to get ready is the frosting or the icing that we put on to the cinnamon rolls tomorrow. And in the cookbook he calls for 2.5 ounces by weight of softened cream cheese, 3 tablespoons of milk, and 5.5 ounces of confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar. Now, let's not lie to each other. Between frosted cake, cupcakes, and cinnamon rolls, let's face it, those items are there to deliver one thing and one thing only, and that's the frosting. So we are actually going to double the frosting. So I will be using 5 ounces by weight of cream cheese, 6 tablespoons of milk, and 11 ounces of powdered sugar. Because let's face it, you can never get enough icing on your cinnamon roll. Now one note, he does mention to sift the powdered sugar. And what I did is I put the bowl on here and the wire basket and zeroed the scale out, and then I put the powdered sugar in there and I came up to 11. It dropped to 10.9, but it's basically at 11 ounces. So that is how you know you have 11 ounces. And if you don't have one of these electronic kitchen scales, go see Denise down at Gourmet Chef. She'll sell you one of these. So what I'm doing here is just shaking this back and forth, and that is sifting it. Now, I grew up in Hillsboro, home of one of the beet plants, and wherever they had the processed sugared, I was out on some tours of the beet plant. If anybody smoked or had anything that created a flame, before they went into certain buildings, they had drop boxes on the outside of the building because they feared explosions. And what I noticed whenever I sift this, I don't know if you can hear this, but it creates static electricity. And so a little bit of trivia there. If you ever are around a beet plant, they, you can hear that shock. They do not let you have combustible stuff near the finished products where they store it. Now, he does not call for this. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to put just a smidgen of salt in there. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Again, that's optional. It's up to you. Now we're going to use the stand mixer to put this together. But what I found is the stand mixer cannot get down low enough to get into the cream cheese. So I'm actually going to use a hand whisk to beat this smooth. Otherwise you will have lumps of, you will have lumps of cream cheese in your frosting, and you don't want that. So we will take and mix this by hand, and then when we incorporate the powdered sugar, then we will use the stand mixer. Okay, now we've got that creamed together, the milk and the sour cream. So I think I'll set it right about there. We will slowly, in several installments, add this powdered sugar. Now you're probably thinking, how are you going to get all that powdered sugar into there? But trust me, it'll all go in. And we'll take our time and scrape the sides down as we go. You don't want to get that beater going too fast because you don't want to whip it and put air into it. You just want it to be a nice smooth frosting. Oops. As you can see, our frosting has come together. We will stash this. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, doesn't that look good? And our icing will be ready for tomorrow morning. You can never get enough of this stuff.
You get going.
Hey.
No.
Don't judge me.
No.
Admit it, you do the same thing.
Right now, that makes for your service left.
That's good.
Once the investigation.
As you can see, our bread has definitely doubled in volume, and this was in for just under 2 hours. So what we're going to do next, sprinkle some flour on the countertop. You don't want to knead this anymore. It never wants to come out.
Exercise also helps. This video was sent to us from a viewer. She's doing at-home yoga to keep calm.
No, what we're going to try to do is use your knuckles, flatten this out.
Locking down their iPads after about an hour of use, and
That will redistribute the yeast bubbles.
now today we're out on the bikes for a few hours and playing on the playground.
You can also try your hand at do-it-yourself art projects. Get those
And
good ideas there.
what we do is get this into somewhat of a rectangle. Use your husband beater. My wife beats me with this all the time.
Many decided to take a walk along the trails while others hit the jungle gym. Some decided to have some fun
And
on the trampoline.
we want to be roughly
They were tired of being cooped up at home, so they decided to just get some fresh air.
18 by 12.
So you take advantage of it now.
We've definitely got the 12 there.
In the nice temperatures.
So we want to go
Have fun, interact.
wider this way.
Minimal social distance between
So
family
we
members.
are about 18 by
If we're going out in the community in those stores.
12.
According to the National Institutes of Health, being outside for 15 minutes a day is enough to relieve
So
anxiety
we'll
and
flatten that
depression.
out.
And cases of the
Get
coronavirus
it into a rectangle. Now let's see what we got. A little bit more.
Puts the total at 33,276 cases. We updated these numbers just a couple of minutes ago.
Those corners out.
117. In fact, today in Michigan,
That's good enough.
150 cases.
Okay, next thing we're going to do is melt a little butter. Okay, we have melted our butter. Now we want to leave this top edge free of butter, so do not get butter up there. Stay away from that because you want to be able to seal the roll up. Spread the butter around.
But she says she's never seen anything quite like COVID-19. Well, the IOC will look at postponing the Tokyo Olympics. It was announced today amid mounting criticism by athletes and sports officials over the coronavirus pandemic. The International Olympic Committee says over the next 4 weeks,
I wish you could smell this right now. It smells really, really good.
officials, broadcasters, and sponsors will deal with scenario planning for the July 24th through August 9th games. This includes
Next up,
postponement. The
this is
IOC
our
said in a statement adding,
light brown sugar, cinnamon, and salt mixture.
the change in strategy followed
Spread
the
this
IOC
out
president
onto your
Trump leading a conference call with
cinnamon
executive board
rolls.
members. Fox has consistently said organizers are fully committed to opening the games on July 24th.
Okay, we got our brown sugar on there. Just kind of pat this out, spread it around.
Information first.
Breaking tonight, almost 30 people are displaced after an apartment fire in downtown Minot.
Covering the stories that matter.
New tonight, a scam that
Get it spread out somewhat evenly.
Ready for tomorrow. Before you turn in, turn on KX.
And once you get that spread out and packed in a little bit,
isn't a 9 to 5
fill in those little
This is a
gaps.
late night, early morning commitment to finding you the right house to call home.
And now,
The knowledge, the friendly
we will
hands
roll this up, starting
every house, but your
and
house.
closest to
We
you.
welcome that at the front door. Your neighbor
Right there, sure.
That's that Melon's parents. Two dots and portrait of you. The home of your dreams.
Roll this up.
Want to make it real.
Matt Mellon's the one we were always fishing with.
Action Realtor.
Since no deck insurance companies
Okay, got that rolled up. Now take and pinch off your seam as best you can. That's why we did not get butter on that, because we don't want it
our coverage ensures your the way we live and work has changed. But our values
to roll that out. Now,
Dad, do you get a little piece of that?
just a minute. Now, for all of you reduce, reuse, and recycle people, please do not count me among you. This is the dental floss I used this morning to floss my teeth. I'm going to use it again. No, this is fresh. Dental floss is an A1 first class multitasker, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a little off the ends, and those are cook snacks, or snacks to keep your family quiet. So what we're going to do, we want 12, we're going to first of all split this in half, and then split it in half again, and then we're going to form these each 3 times.
Big bite.
part of the KX News putting North Dakota first community outreach. Brought to you by McDonald's.
My family's in the background snacking on those. Try to get them roughly the same size.
Delicious.
You're watching KX.
Oops, so that one will be a little bit big.
Or go to a little more bite.
Welcome back. The application deadline for moose, elk, and
I'll be here for breakfast.
licenses is
Okay, so we got that done. Now what we have here is a pan, lightly buttered, and just take your cinnamon rolls and place them in here like this. Hopefully you can still see that. Let's turn it a little bit.
A slight decrease from last year of 5 licenses, where last year we issued 479, this year we're issuing 474 licenses.
If you're applying for a moose or elk license, you need to be aware of
Okay.
units with chronic wasting disease
Let's
restrictions.
see.
For elk, we have, this year we're gonna have 2 total units, 1 new unit for chronic wasting disease. Unit
And then-
6, and then the new unit will be.
Let's see. Take and
And for
cover this up
we will also have
with saran wrap.
for chronic wasting
or as my mother-in-law says, sarin wrap, so it makes it sound like sarin gas, like it's something poisonous. Cover this up with saran wrap, and we will refrigerate these overnight. And what's going to happen, that yeast is going to still rise, but very, very slowly, and it's going to impart, you know, more of the flavors of the fermenting yeast. And then we will actually bake these tomorrow. So we'll see you in the morning. Good morning. It's now day 2. As you can tell, I have not put my makeup on yet. Today is baking day. I pulled the cinnamon rolls out of the refrigerator, put them on the countertop for, about a half hour while I had a cup of coffee just to let them warm up. Now the next thing we're going to do, let me adjust this. This is a heating kettle. We're going to boil some water in that and then put these into the oven, pour this into a pan that's right below it, and then that is going to proof the cinnamon rolls and really kind of make them puff up. Now some of you may say this is a unitasker, but I say it's a multitasker. If you're making soups, you can put your stock in here, or chicken stock or whatever, to warm it up as you're making soup. I've made hard-boiled eggs in here, bring it up to a boil. As soon as this is at a boil, it shuts off. Leave it sit for X amount of minutes and then put your eggs into an ice bath. So this is kind of a handy little multitasker. And I bought this at Gourmet Chef downtown in Minot, and I use this fairly often. Okay, we have now reached a boil. We'll pour the boiling water into the pan. And put that into there. And shut the lid and set your timer for a half hour. Okay, a half hour of TV time has flown by. As you can see, our cinnamon rolls have puffed. We will pull those out of the oven. Pull the pan of hot water out of the oven. Let me get rid of that. And we will set the oven to 350 degrees. Okay, the oven is preheated, and in the recipe it says to cook this for about 30 minutes. I'm going to cook it for 25 and check them at that point. Due to the high sugar content in the dough, these tend to brown up pretty easily. So in 25 minutes we'll start checking. I baked these for 27 minutes in my oven. And what you want to do is get these out of the pan so they don't sit up in there. Ooh, look at that. That is called Cook Snacks. And we'll let those cool. If I was ever going to sell my house, right before the open house, I'd make up a set of these cinnamon rolls and leave that smell, that aroma, for anybody who came into the house. I know it's not fair. You can't smell these, but I can. Wonderful. And now, the moment to enjoy. Good thing we doubled the frosting, because as I said last night, you can never get enough frosting. Enjoy, like, share, comment, but most importantly, don't be afraid to try this stuff at home.